My 11-year-old daughter came home, and her key didn't fit. She spent 5 hours in the rain waiting. Then my mother came out and said, "We have all decided you and your mom don't live here anymore." I didn't shout. I just said, "Understood." 3 days later, my mother received a letter and went pale. It was just a normal day at work. That sentence cut 20 years of pretending. No scenes. Only outcomes. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Seabrook Ridge is a town that smells like wet cedar and old coffee. The kind of place where fog hangs low, and the gulls sound like alarms that forgot why they were screaming. I work nights at Harborview, where the air tastes like antiseptic, and the fluorescent lights hum like they are judging you. I can glove up in the dark. I can start an IV with my eyes half closed. I can hold a boundary without raising my voice. That last skill took years. People think cruelty is loud. In my house, it arrived in soft lighting and curated smiles. Brooke laughed and the room applauded. I spoke, and someone told me to be reasonable. It is a strange education. Learning that your silence keeps the peace, while your pain pays the bill. I graduated with honors. Before all this, Eric taught Maya how to listen to leaves. He would stand by the lemon tree and tilt his head, like the branches were whispering. He said you could hear thirst if you were patient. He said patience is not passive. It is attention. Maya loved that. She would put her ear near the leaf and nod, like she understood a secret. I held that image when the porch light flicked and the door closed on my child. I held it so I would not break. At the hospital the night after the lockout, my hands knew what to do, while my head replayed the porch. Triage. Vitals. Chart. Breathe. Somewhere between a blood draw and a bed assignment, I opened my locker and stared at the empty slot where bills should have been. It felt small, like a loose thread. I told myself not to tug. I tugged anyway. I checked the next day. Another bill missing. That is when the thread turned into a line leading away from me. Driving home, after shift. The tires hummed and the wipers beat time. My hands went bloodless on the wheel, and I loosened them on purpose. I passed the inlet. The bait shop. The sagging banner for a festival that already happened. I rehearsed every sentence I would not say. I will not shout on a porch again. Shouting turns truth into weather. Weather passes. Paper stays. Dana has always loved a theme. She called the lock change a reset for healing. She said it with that bright tone that belongs on a morning show. She forgot my daughter was soaked to the knees. Or she remembered and preferred it. 2 days after the funeral, she had called a paint store and ordered pale curtains. New rugs. Fresh energy. 72 hours after burying the man who built that life. She staged the living room like grief could be redecorated into submission. I learned something then. Control can wear white. I kept a receipt envelope in my bag. I wrote on the flap in marker. For Maya. Inside there was a daycare charge for $180 when I had to extend a shift. There was a locksmith estimate for $260 that I refused because it would have rewarded the stunt. There was the old apartment deposit from last year. $2,400. The last time I thought distance might fix blood. I did not keep these as trophies. I kept them to remind myself what survival cost and what protection would require next. Brooke loved to film the house like it was an asset she had personally conjured. The day after the lockout, she filmed a room tour featuring her kids and a caption about fresh starts. She held the phone high and smiled with all her teeth. People like that learn early that confidence reads as truth. I learned later that records read louder. I walked the perimeter that afternoon and memorized the small things. The scuff on the banister. The lemon tree holding on to 3 green fruit that might or might not finish. The hairline crack in the tile near the threshold. Like the floor itself had been clenching for years. I did not ring the bell. I did not ask for permission to check the mailbox. I looked at the flag and thought about that loose thread. Something was wrong with the mail. I could feel it like a draft under a door. When I got back to the ER, I washed my hands longer than necessary. The water hit my wrists and woke up the part of me that had been sleeping through peace. I thought of Eric explaining that gentle is not soft. Gentle is precise. He said surgery is gentle because it knows exactly where to cut. The lesson landed. My voice would be a scalpel. My proof would be the suture. People say mothers become different people when their children are threatened. I did not become different. I became exact. I stopped performing calm for adults who enjoyed the show and gave the calm to the kid who earned it. I stopped negotiating with a porch light. I started counting. Here is the thesis I wish someone had handed me at 12. Some families run on the labor of the quiet one. The quiet one cooks. Forgets credit. Stays out of photos. Makes excuses. Takes responsibility. swallows heat, repairs the damage, and gets called dramatic when she coughs up the smoke. She is scaffolding that was never meant to be seen. She is told that being unseen is noble. It is not. It is erasure with a halo. So, I stepped away from the frame. Not with a scream. With a ledger. I wrote down every name. Every date. Every cost. I wrote down the empty mailbox and the second empty slot. I wrote down the way Dana's smile tightened when I refused to take the bait. I wrote down the exact color of the sky when my child asked if we still had a home. I did not know yet about the forwarding order. I did not know yet about the letter hidden in the trust. But I knew this. The house remembered who kept it gentle. I was done proving it to people who never listened to leaves. I would prove it to paper. The morning after I made that promise, I stopped at the post office before my shift. The clerk looked tired enough to trust. I asked her to check if any mail had been redirected from my address. She frowned. Typed. Then glanced up with a mix of apology and curiosity. Looks like there's a forwarding order, Brooke Miller. Her name. Not mine. My stomach went cold. Of course. I thanked the clerk. Asked her to cancel it. And requested a printed confirmation. She nodded slowly. Like she'd seen this sort of family betrayal before. On the drive to the hospital, I called Alden Pierce, the attorney who had handled my father's estate. His voice was clipped. Polite. Bring everything you have. And come today. The rain had returned by the time I reached his office, a red brick building with wavy glass that made the outside world look like it was underwater. He laid the trust documents in front of me. Methodical. Paper 1. He said, tapping the page. Your father placed the property in a living trust. You're the trustee. Your mother has no legal standing. I nodded once. No satisfaction. Just confirmation. Then he slid forward another document. Paper 2. Police report. You said your daughter was locked out for 5 hours, I corrected him. 4 hours and 40 minutes. He wrote that down. The precision mattered. He stamped it once, thunk, and that sound echoed somewhere in my chest. Alden kept going. Paper 3. Emergency, possession, petition. It grants temporary control of the property until the dispute is resolved. Another thunk. Paper 4. Writ of possession scheduled for 10:30 a.m. This Thursday. A third stamp. Heavier this time. Paper 5. Sheriff's inventory checklist. They'll catalog items to prevent claims of loss or damage. Final thunk. The sound was mechanical. But to me, it felt alive. He called it the ladder report. Emergency order. Writ. Sheriff. He said it so simply that I almost laughed. A ladder. Built from pages. Leading out of a family's control. I wasn't climbing for revenge. I was climbing for oxygen. He asked if I wanted to serve the notice personally. I shook my head. No more doorsteps. He smiled faintly. Understood. Back in my car. The confirmation from the post office sat on the passenger seat. The ink still wet. Evidence. Not anger. Not gossip. Just proof. It didn't feel like war. It felt like calibration. Like adjusting a machine that had been misaligned for decades. At work that night, I tucked the papers inside a plastic sleeve in my locker. Behind my spare scrubs. My hands moved automatically chart. Draw. Repeat. But my mind traced the sequence. Paper 1 proved possession. Paper 2 showed neglect. Paper 3 claimed emergency control. Paper 4 called in the state. Paper 5 would end it. A 5-step ladder from silence to sovereignty. Around 2 a.m. I checked my phone. Brooke had posted a new video. The caption read, "Fresh starts and family energy claiming our space," in the background. My father's lemon tree blurred through the window. I didn't comment. Didn't message. Didn't react. I screen recorded the whole thing and saved it to a folder named Evidence Family. The sound of her laughter hit like feedback. When my break ended, I stood by the sink, watching water run clear over my hands. For years I thought being calm meant being small. It doesn't. Calm is control. Calm is power turned inward, until it's ready to move outward. By dawn, the paperwork was filed. Filing fee, $185. Sheriff Administration, $90. Alden had told me to expect resistance. They'll say it's fake. They'll say you manipulated him. They always do. I told him that was fine. They had always said I was dramatic when I told the truth. Why should this be any different? At home, I checked the mailbox out of habit. Empty again. But not for long. The ladder had already been placed against the wall. All I had to do was climb. 3 nights later, a certified envelope waited under my windshield wiper. Alden's copy of the writ. Sealed in red. 10:30 a.m. Thursday. The words felt cold and solid. Like metal. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The porch light might still be on. But this time, the light wasn't theirs. It was mine. The day the envelope arrived, I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter beside the coffee maker. Edges curling from steam. It didn't matter what it said, I already knew. Still, I waited until Maya was asleep. The kitchen was quiet except for the refrigerator's slow heartbeat. I broke the seal and found another envelope tucked inside. Smaller. Cream-colored. My father's handwriting across the front. It was addressed not to me, but to her, Maya. It said, "A house is just a roof until someone makes it gentle. The keys belong to whoever keeps it gentle." I must have read that line a dozen times. My father had written in fountain pen. The kind that bleeds a little when it feels too much. My throat closed around air. He hadn't left a riddle. He'd left an instruction. Ownership wasn't about control. It was about stewardship. About care. I wanted to wake Maya and tell her. But some things need to arrive in silence. I slid the letter back into its sleeve. The next morning, I scrolled my phone out of habit and froze. Brooke had posted again, her page filled with staged photos of the house. The caption read, "Found this vintage bench while reorganizing Dad's place. DM for details, local pickup." Only I zoomed in on the photo. The piano bench. The one he'd played every Sunday morning while humming songs that never quite matched the keys. I didn't cry. I took screenshots instead. I saved every one. Then searched the resale platform she used. There it was, same bench. Same caption. Price tagged at $140. I laughed once. Sharp and short. The appraisal papers still sat in my glove box, $4,000 for the piano and the bench together. Proof wasn't emotional. Proof was arithmetic. I spent my lunch break at the nurse's station. Opening a new folder on my phone. Family assets do not delete. I filed each screenshot. Each message. Each photo. Then I went home and copied them onto a flash drive. Not to win. To remember. Because people like Dana and Brooke rewrite history faster than they can tell it. Paper doesn't forget. That night, I sat in the driveway of the house. I wasn't allowed in and watched the lights through the rain. I thought about the note. About keeping it gentle. I wondered if gentleness could survive this kind of rot. Then I realized it wasn't my job to keep everyone gentle. It was my job to make sure Maya still believed gentleness existed. Inside. Through the curtains. Brooke walked across the living room holding her phone up high. Probably filming a new clip about healing or forgiveness or whatever. Sells fastest that week. Dana followed behind her. Rearranging flowers. Polishing a table. Pretending not to notice me in the car. I didn't move. I wanted her to see me sitting there. Steady as gravity. I wanted her to feel that the story had changed hands. When I finally drove off, I left the headlights on a second, longer than needed. The porch light blinked back. Weak and gold. Like it wasn't sure which of us it belonged to anymore. The next morning, Alden called. "We're on schedule. The sheriff's enforcement is confirmed for Thursday at 10:30. His tone was calm. Procedural. Mine matched. "Thank you," I said. After we hung up, I looked at the clock. 48 hours. That's how long I had to turn every trace of anger into action. I cleaned the car. I washed the scrubs I'd been living in. I packed a lunch for Maya and added a note. "You are the gentle one." Not them. She'd understand later. I didn't tell her about the enforcement. She still believed fairness was automatic. That adults fixed what they broke. I wanted to keep that illusion a little longer. The night before it happened, I couldn't sleep. The rain hit the windows like static. I watched the lemon tree sway under the porch light and thought of my father's voice. Low and steady. Be gentle. But don't be soft. By morning, I was ready. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even angry. I was precise. Paper precise. The morning of the enforcement. The world looked made of tin. The sky. The street. Even the breath that came out of me, all gray. Cold. Metallic. I got dressed in silence. Scrubs. Jacket. Hair pulled back. Maya was at school. Safe in her bubble of normal. She thought I was running errands. In a way, I was. I pulled up to Juniper Lane at 10:15. 3 cars in the driveway, Brooke's SUV. Kyle's truck. My mother's sedan parked like a crown jewel in the middle. Of course they were all home. People like them never miss an audience. 2 deputies stood on the porch. Professional faces under hoods. One looked over as I parked. "Miss O'Shea," I nodded. He nodded back. The other knocked on the door. Firm. Not angry. Voices inside. Muffled. Then rising. Dana first high. Offended. "This is my home." Then Brooke. Playing victim. "You can't just throw us out." Kyle's tone underneath. Deep and useless. Saying something about rights. The deputy knocked again. Harder. The rain made everything sound close. When the door opened, my mother stood there like she'd rehearsed it. Hair perfect. Lipstick precise. "You," she said, pointing across the yard, like I'd crawled out of hell to ruin her day. Behind her, Brooke lifted her phone. Already recording. "Ma'am?" the deputy said evenly. "We have a court order. You have 15 minutes to collect essentials." Dana laughed. Sharp and brittle. "You can't be serious." He was. The timer on his watch started. Brooke gasped like she'd been shot. "This is abuse," she announced to no one and everyone. Kyle slammed a door somewhere inside, trying to prove existence through noise. I didn't move from the sidewalk. I kept my hands in my jacket pockets. Eyes steady. I'd already said everything that mattered. Paper had said the rest. Through the window I saw them scurrying, Brooke grabbing frames off the wall. Dana waving her arms. Kyle pacing. It looked like a play at the end of its run. Actors forgetting their lines. 15 minutes later. The deputy stepped aside. Brooke came out first. Carrying a pile of clothes and 2 framed photos, one of her kids. One of my father. She'd stolen from his office. I almost told her to put it back. Then I remembered not my circus. Kyle followed. Box in his arms. Jaw tight. Then Dana. She paused on the threshold. Eyes glossy, with fury and disbelief. "I hope you're proud," she hissed. I wasn't. I was tired. The deputies waited until their cars pulled away. The older one turned to me. "Case in Hunt?" "Ma'am," he said. "It's yours now." 3 words heavier than any I'd heard in years. The keys dropped into my palm with a clean metallic click. Some doors open when paper speaks. I stepped inside. The air smelled like perfume and dust. A wine glass half full on the counter. A jacket over a chair. It looked like they'd vanished mid-season. Leaving the set behind, I opened windows one by one. The rain drifted in. Soft and steady. Washing out the scent of them. For a second, I thought I heard my father's voice in the quiet. "You did what you had to." Maybe I imagined it. Maybe not. I leaned against the doorway and let the silence spread. It wasn't victory. It was oxygen. That night, I picked Maya up from school. She climbed into the car. I looked at the boxes in the back seat. "Are we moving again?" she asked. "Home," I said. The word felt strange in my mouth, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. When we reached the house, she hesitated on the porch. The same spot where she'd once waited in the rain. I opened the door and handed her the keys. "You first," I said. She turned them slowly, heard the click, and smiled. Inside, the lemon tree bent toward the window, rain streaking the glass. Maya ran from room to room, fingertips brushing walls, like she was claiming them back. "It's ours again," she said. I nodded. It always was. Later, when she fell asleep, I walked through the quiet house and thought about justice. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in paper and signatures and measured footsteps. Sometimes it sounds like a lock turning for the right person. Outside, the rain kept falling steady. Cleansing. Patient. Just the way my father taught us to be. Gentle. But never soft. 6 months later, the house still felt different, lighter. Quieter. Honest. The lemon tree had new shoots. Maya said they looked like green candles. Tiny promises burning upward. Most nights, I came home from the ER and found her in the backyard. Hands in the dirt. Talking to the soil, like it could hear her. She said plants grow faster when you stop shouting at them. Maybe people do too. We hadn't heard from Dana or Brooke since the day the deputies left. I blocked every number. Silence was its own gift. But small towns gossip, even when you don't pick up the phone. Word travels like wind through a cracked window. You can ignore the noise, but you still hear it. From what reached me, they tried living together. It lasted a month. Dana started redecorating Brooke's house. New curtains. New rules. New chaos. Brooke screamed about boundaries on Facebook Marketplace. Someone screenshotted the argument and sent it to me, Brooke, listing her dining set. Dana commenting, "You don't even live here." I didn't reply. Beautiful symmetry doesn't need applause. Alden called sometimes to check in. He said the file was officially closed. "Congratulations, Ms. O'Shea," he'd tell me. But it didn't sound like a finish line. It sounded like breathing space. We didn't talk about money, or who was right, or how justice feels. We both knew justice doesn't feel like fireworks, it feels like sleep without dread. That evening, I spread newspapers over the kitchen table. Maya brought out a glass bowl, soil, and a small fern she'd been keeping alive since Science Week. "Terrarium," she said proudly. "It needs light and a lid." I smiled, repeating her words. Exactly. Light and a lid. We layered stones at the bottom, then charcoal, then soil. She pressed the fern in carefully, like tucking in a heartbeat. I watched her and realized that's what I'd been doing all along, trying to build a space where things could grow without being crushed by someone else's weather. When we finished, the terrarium glowed in the last bit of daylight. Maya leaned her face close to the glass. "Look," she whispered. "It's already breathing." I thought about the papers, the signatures, the keys. The way a system that once ignored me finally said yes. I thought about my father's letter. The keys belong to whoever keeps the house gentle. Gentle doesn't mean weak. It means deliberate. It means knowing exactly where to cut and when to stop. It means planting a seed and protecting it from the noise. I ran a hand along the window frame. The house hummed quietly. No footsteps. No shouting. No door slams. Just air moving the way it should. Peace isn't loud. It's the absence of performance. When the rain started again, it wasn't a threat. It was music. The porch light glowed steady. If no longer pretending to be warmth, it simply was. I whispered to myself. Paper spoke. Silence stayed. If you've ever had to choose gentleness over chaos, tell me what you learned. Because sometimes, the loudest victory in the world is the one that ends with a whisper. And if this story found you tonight, stay. We build better homes together, one gentle key at a time.